"It's gone, Mom. Stop whining, it's already sold." Those words hit me harder than the heart monitor's flatline 6 months ago when I lost Harold. My son, Adrian, stood in my Portland kitchen like he owned the place, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes void of guilt. His tone was casual, almost bored, as if he hadn't just ripped away the last piece of my husband I had left. I froze, my hands still wet from washing dishes, Harold's coffee mug trembling in my grip. I looked at Adrian, trying to convince myself I'd misheard, but the smug tilt of his chin told me I hadn't. "You sold your father's Rolex?" My voice cracked, the words strangled by disbelief. Adrian rolled his eyes, as though I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Mom, seriously, get over it. It was just a watch. Just a watch." The phrase sliced through me like a blade. That watch wasn't metal and glass. It was memory. It was Harold winding it every morning while his coffee brewed. It was the tick-tick in the quiet evenings when he'd hold my hand in the living room. It was the weight in my palm when the hospital handed me a plastic bag containing his wedding band and the watch, the last items he ever touched. And now, my own son had pawned it like it was nothing. I steadied myself against the counter, forcing back tears. "Adrian," I whispered, "how could you do this? That watch, Harold saved overtime for 3 months when you were born just to buy it. He wore it every day for 43 years. It's worth far more than—" "They gave me $800. Adrian interrupted with a shrug, tapping his shiny new Apple Watch. "Not bad for something that old." My stomach turned. $800? "Adrian, that Rolex was worth at least $3,000. Before he could respond, a voice slithered into the kitchen like poison. "Oh, come on, Evelyn." It was Cassandra, Adrian's wife, perched at my table with her phone in hand, scrolling as if my heartbreak were background noise. She didn't even look up when she spoke, her voice dripping with condescension. "Clinging to material things isn't healthy. Harold wouldn't want you living in the past." Her words burned hotter than Adrian's betrayal. "Don't tell me what Harold would want," I thought bitterly. Cassandra had been telling me what Harold would want since the funeral, always when it involved giving them something. I gripped the counter to steady my shaking hands. "Which pawn shop?" I asked, my voice barely steady. At last, Cassandra glanced up, smirking. "Oh, good. She's being reasonable now." Adrian checked his Apple Watch again, clearly impatient. "Harborline Pawn on 4th Street. We've got a flight tomorrow. Cassandra's been planning our Italy trip for months." Cassandra's lips curled into a self-satisfied smile. "You really should consider therapy, Evelyn. This obsession with Harold's things isn't normal." The front door slammed behind them, leaving me in silence. A silence I knew too well since Harold's death. But tonight, it wasn't the suffocating silence of loneliness. It was the silence after a storm. Heavy. Waiting. I stared at the space. Adrian had stood in, my heart pounding with grief and fury. They thought I was weak. They thought Harold's widow was just an old woman clutching at relics of the past. But here's what Adrian and Cassandra didn't know about their pathetic old mother. I'd spent 40 years as a bank manager. I knew the difference between giving up and strategic planning. And I was done giving up. That watch wasn't gone. Not yet. I grabbed my coat, Harold's mug still warm on the counter, and whispered to myself, "I'm getting it back." I drove through the quiet Portland. Streets, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every traffic light felt like an eternity. Every second that passed, I imagined a stranger strapping Harold's watch onto their wrist, ignorant of the love it carried. When I reached Harborline Pawn, its flickering neon sign buzzed in the misty night air. The store was exactly what I expected. Cramped, dusty, the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everything look sickly. A man with tattooed arms and weary eyes stood behind the counter. His name tag read, Colin Mercer. Before I could even open my mouth, he sighed. "You hear about the Rolex?" My breath caught. How did you know? Your son warned me you might show up, said you were having a hard time letting go. Throat tightened. Adrian had expected me, mocked me, even here. Colin's voice softened, almost apologetic. Look, lady, I feel for you, but business is business. I paid fair market value. Fair market value, as if there were a market price for 43 years of marriage, for Harold winding that watch while I made breakfast, for the day he slipped it off his wrist and whispered, "Someday, this will be Adrian's." My knees wobbled, but I forced myself upright. "I'll buy it back," I said quickly. "Whatever you need." Colin hesitated, then shook his head. "It's already sold. A guy came in this morning, paid cash. No returns in this business." The room tilted. My chest felt hollow. Some stranger was walking around Portland wearing Harold's watch, and I'd never see it again, because my son needed pizza money for his Italian vacation. I turned to leave, but Colin called after me. "Ma'am, wait. There's something." "You should know," I spun back, desperate. "What?" He disappeared into a back room, returning with a small manila envelope. He set it gently on the counter. "When we were cleaning the watch for sale, we found a hidden compartment in the back. A real professional job. This was inside." My hands shook as I took the envelope. Inside was a folded, yellowed piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully, and the sight of Harold's handwriting made my breath hitch. It read, "Evelyn's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I'd marry her." Beneath it, a strange series of letters and numbers, SS4457, C80815EGI. Blinked, tears stinging my eyes. Harold had never told me about this. For 43 years, he'd kept a secret on his wrist, right there beside me every single day. Colin leaned on the counter. "Do you know what those numbers mean?" I shook my head, but deep inside something stirred. The code was important. I could feel it. And for the first time since Harold died, I wasn't just grieving. I was searching. I stood frozen in that pawn shop, Harold's handwriting burning in my trembling hands. For months, I'd longed to feel close to him again. I thought that closeness had been stolen forever when Adrian sold the Rolex. But now, with this scrap of yellowed paper, Harold was speaking to me from beyond the grave. Evelyn's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I'd marry her. The words blurred through my tears. He remembered the very night we met at that summer dance, the evening air sticky with ocean salt and laughter. He told me once, long ago, that he knew I'd be his wife before I even knew his name. To see it written here, preserved for decades in the secret heart of his watch, made my chest ache with longing. But beneath the sweetness of the words was something cold, deliberate. A code, SS4457 CH815EG. I traced the letters with my fingertip. "What is this, Harold?" I whispered. Colin Mercer shifted uncomfortably behind the counter. His tattooed arms were folded now, his sharp eyes softer than before. "Ma'am, I see a lot of folks come in here with sob stories. But this?" He nodded toward the paper. "This is different, feels important." I tucked the note back into the envelope as if it were sacred scripture. Did he know about it?" Colin's lips pressed into a thin line. When I mentioned there was something inside the watch, he got real interested, asked if we'd opened it, paid cash, no questions, no name. My stomach twisted. "So someone was looking for Harold's watch?" Colin gave a slight shrug. "Seems that way." I swallowed hard. Harold's watch hadn't just been stolen by my son's greed. It had been hunted. By whom? And why? "Please," I whispered, leaning across the counter. "Can you at least describe him?" Colin hesitated. His eyes searched mine, maybe looking for signs of frailty, the kind of weakness my daughter-in-law Cassandra loved to accuse me of. Instead, I let him see the raw truth, my grief, my desperation, my need for answers. Finally, he sighed. Late. 50s, maybe. Well-dressed. Not the type you usually see in here. He knew exactly what he wanted. A chill ran through me. Harold's secrets had walked out the door on a stranger's wrist. I clutched the envelope to my chest and left the pawn shop, the bell over the door jingling behind me like cruel laughter. Outside, the streets of Portland felt different, heavier. Every passerby could be the man who now carried Harold's secret. Every sound of footsteps echoed like a threat. Back home, I sat at Harold's old oak desk. The envelope lay in front of me like a loaded gun. I stared at the code again. SS4457 CH0815EG. The logical part of me, the part shaped by 40 years of managing numbers, ledgers, and accounts, kicked in. I pulled out Harold's meticulous financial files, the ones he'd organized with military precision. Bank statements, tax returns, retirement records. I combed through every document searching for a match. Nothing. Hours slipped by as I flipped page after page, the steady tick of the wall clock reminding me of the Rolex's absent heartbeat. Midnight came and went. My eyes burned from the lamplight, but I couldn't stop. Could it mean Social Security? I muttered to myself. But Harold's number doesn't start with 4457. I rubbed my temples. CH Chicago? No, we never lived there. My gaze drifted to the framed photograph of our wedding day on the desk. I looked young and nervous in my lace gown. Harold looked dashing in his dark suit, his arm around me with quiet pride. Below the photo, engraved in silver, August 15th, 1960. My breath caught. CH0815. Could it be our anniversary? And EG? My initials. Evelyn Grant. The code wasn't random. It was ours. I shivered, goosebumps prickling my arms. Harold had left me a trail, a secret I was meant to uncover. I barely noticed the ringing phone until it buzzed against the desk, startling me. The caller ID flashed. Adrian. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct told me to answer. Mom, Adrian said quickly, his voice tight. Cassandra says you made a scene at the pawn shop. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Trying to recover my husband's stolen watch is not a scene. Look, it's done, okay? It's gone. Move on. His voice was dismissive, but there was a tremor beneath it, something sharp and alert. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. There was something hidden inside the watch, Adrian. Your father left me a message. Silence crackled on the line. Then, carefully, what kind of message? I hesitated. The truth pressed at my lips, but something in Adrian's tone made my skin crawl. For the first time in months, he sounded interested, hungry even. Just some numbers, I said vaguely. Probably nothing important. A pause. Then his voice sharpened. What did it say exactly? I clenched my jaw. It's none of your concern. Mom, listen. Maybe I should come over, help you figure it out. A bitter laugh escaped me. Yesterday you told me to stop living in the past. Today you want to help? I'm just trying to be supportive, he said. But the lie dripped from every word. Supportive. By stealing Harold's watch, by pawning it for pocket money, by siding with Cassandra's cruel condescension. I felt a cold certainty settle in my gut. Adrian wanted the code. He wanted whatever Harold had hidden. Good night, Adrian, I said firmly and hung up. I stared at the silent phone, my heart pounding. My own son, the boy Harold had taught to ride a bike, the man we'd sacrificed for, was circling like a vulture. He knew the code meant something, and he wouldn't stop until he had it. I turned back to the desk. Harold's files spread around me like a battlefield. The code burned in my mind. SS44457 CH0815EG. I grabbed my laptop and began searching late into the night. My banker's instincts guided me. Offshore investments, Swiss accounts, encrypted client numbers, and then There it was, Secure Solutions Investment Management, Cayman Islands. My pulse raced as I typed the code into the client login field. The screen flickered, valid account number. My breath hitched. All I needed now was the password. I tried the obvious. Our wedding date, our address, my birthday. Nothing. Then I remembered the note. Evelyn's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I'd marry her. Not my real birthday, the night we first met. With shaking hands, I typed 07155. The screen blinked. Access granted. I gasped, clutching the desk for balance as the account details filled the screen. Current balance, $2,470,296.72. I stared, my vision blurring. Nearly $3 million. For decades, while I clipped coupons and worried about retirement, Harold had been hiding a fortune. Anger, grief, and disbelief surged all at once. Harold. Why? I whispered to the empty room. The Rolex had carried more than memories. It carried a secret that changed everything, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the truth. I barely noticed the hours slipping by as I pored over Harold's meticulous records. His desk was a fortress of order, bank ledgers stacked neatly, tax files labeled year by year, receipts tucked into folders as if he knew someday someone would need to retrace his steps. But no matter how many pages I turned, how many numbers I compared, nothing in his ordinary life explained the code from the watch, SS4457CH0815EG. It wasn't just numbers and letters, it was deliberate, crafted, personal. I could feel Harold's mind behind it, the way he used to create clever scavenger hunts for Adrian's birthdays. Harold thought in patterns, in rules, and he'd left me a puzzle to solve. I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion setting in, but my instincts refused to rest. The CH0815 had to be our wedding anniversary, August 15th, 1960. And the EG, my initials, Evelyn Grant. But what about SS4457? It gnawed at me. It wasn't random. Harold had been too careful for randomness. By 3 a.m, I finally closed the dusty ledger in my lap and opened my laptop. If the answer wasn't in these papers, maybe it was somewhere Harold never wanted me to look. I typed in phrases like offshore banking account codes, Swiss investment identifiers, Cayman Islands client numbers. My fingers shook with every search, as though I was trespassing into a world Harold had walked in secret. And then, my screen lit up with a familiar pattern. Secure Solutions Investment Management, Cayman Islands. The login page asked for a client number. My breath caught as I typed SS4457CH0815EG. The page paused, then confirmed, valid account number. I clutched the edge of the desk, my knees weak. Harold had been hiding something big, but I wasn't in yet. A password box blinked back at me, patient, expectant. I tried the obvious, our anniversary, our home address, Harold's birthday. Nothing. Each rejection tightened the knot in my chest. Then, I remembered the note. Evelyn's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I'd marry her. Not my real birthday, the night we met. With trembling fingers, I typed 071555. The screen flickered. Access granted. I slapped a hand over my mouth. To keep from screaming, numbers filled the screen, black against white, cold and undeniable. Current balance, $2,470,296.172, nearly $3 million. I stared, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. All those years clipping coupons, scrimping to pay, for Adrian's braces, worrying about retirement, and Harold had been hiding millions. The weight of betrayal settled heavy in my chest. "Why, Harold?" I whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" My mind raced back over our life together, every fight about money, every time I patched Harold's work shirts instead of buying new, Every time he said, "We can't afford that." Evie. We'd lived modestly, even frugally, while this fortune sat untouched in the Caribbean. Anger burned hot in my throat, but grief smothered it just as quickly. Harold hadn't been a cruel man. He'd been thoughtful, deliberate, careful. If he hid this, there was a reason. But what reason could possibly justify lying to me for 43 years? The shrill ring of the phone shattered the silence. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Adrian's name glowed on the screen. My pulse quickened. I pressed accept, my voice cautious. "Adrian?" "Mom," he said too quickly, too sharply. "I've been thinking about what you said, about something hidden in Dad's watch." His sudden interest chilled me. He'd been dismissive, mocking, cruel before. But now his tone was clipped, focused, like a predator catching the scent of prey. "What exactly did you find?" He pressed. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "Nothing important, just some numbers, maybe a code Harold scribbled years ago." "Mom," Adrian snapped, his voice sharper. "Don't play games." "What did it say?" I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't curiosity, it was desperation. "Adrian," I said carefully, "why does it matter to you?" Silence. Then, almost too quickly, "It doesn't. I don't want you obsessing over this. You're not well." Not well. The phrase slid over me like oil. It wasn't concern. It was Cassandra's whispering, Cassandra's venom. They were already planting seeds of doubt, setting the stage for something darker. "I'll figure it out," I said flatly. "On my own." "Mom," he pushed, the veneer of patience cracking. "Maybe I should come by tomorrow, help you sort through Dad's things." I laughed bitterly. "You mean the things you haven't already sold?" The line went silent. Then Adrian exhaled, long and frustrated. "Fine, be stubborn. But don't come crying to me when you drive yourself crazy chasing ghosts." The call disconnected. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. For months, I had felt alone in my grief. But now, a darker truth revealed itself. I wasn't just grieving Harold, I was being hunted. I turned back to the glowing screen, the staggering number staring at me. $2.47 million. Shock gave way to questions that twisted into dread. Where had Harold gotten this money? We'd never lived extravagantly. His job at the accounting firm was steady but ordinary. My salary at the bank had been comfortable but never lavish. Had Harold been lying to me our entire marriage? I clicked into the transaction history. The first. Entry, 1982, $5,000 deposit, initial inheritance investment, HG Inheritance. I blinked, stunned. Harold had never mentioned an inheritance. In fact, when his father died, all he'd said was, "Dad left us enough to pay off the mortgage." That had been true, but apparently there had been more. A hidden inheritance. Seed money. From there, the deposits grew. 1,000 here, 2,000 there, small, steady contributions, like Harold had been quietly building a second life. Then, around 2008, the deposits exploded. $10,000, $20,000, $25,000. The notations chilled me. Real estate liquidation. Property sale. Harold had been buying and selling properties without ever telling me. I pushed back from the desk, my head spinning. How could a man sleep beside me for 4 decades and hide an entire empire? And yet, Harold hadn't spent a dime of it on himself. No sports cars, no luxury vacations, no mistresses in high heels and pearls. The money had just grown. Quietly. Secretly. Not selfishness. Strategy, but strategy for what? I clicked on the folder labeled Messages. A single file waited inside. For Evelyn, emergency access only. My hand hovered over the mouse. My breath came in shallow. Gasps. I clicked. The screen filled with Harold's face. He looked older, more tired than I remembered, sitting in what must have been his office. His voice was steady, but his eyes were sad. "Evelyn," he began softly, "if you're watching this, I'm gone. And something has gone wrong." Tears welled in my eyes as I reached for the screen, as if I could touch him. "I hoped you'd never need to see this account. I hoped we'd grow old together, and one day I'd tell you about it over dinner. But life doesn't always give us what we hope for." He rubbed his face, the way he always did when solving a difficult problem. "This money isn't mine, sweetheart. It was my father's. He made me promise to protect it, to keep it secret, to use it only if our family was in real danger. I've been careful, conservative, investing for decades. Every penny is documented, every transaction legal. But I couldn't tell you. Not while Adrian—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Not while Adrian was who he was becoming." My throat closed. Harold had seen it too. The greed, the darkness. His eyes lifted to the camera, piercing through time. "I did this for you, Evelyn. To keep you safe. To keep Adrian from destroying everything we built. If you're watching this, it means I failed. But you must not. Protect yourself, protect what's ours, and never, never trust him with it." The video ended. The screen went black. I sat frozen, tears streaming, Harold's voice echoing in my ears. For 43 years, he'd hidden this. Not from me, but for me. But now Adrian knew I'd found something, and I knew with bone-deep certainty that he wouldn't stop until he had it. Harold's face faded from the screen, but his words lingered in the air like smoke. "This money isn't mine, sweetheart. It was my father's. He made me promise to protect it, to use it only if our family was ever in real danger, and never, never trust Adrian with it." The warning struck me harder than the dollar amount. Harold had seen it too, the same darkness I had glimpsed in Adrian's eyes but never wanted to name. For decades, I had excused my son's selfishness as immaturity, or stress, or Cassandra's influence. But Harold hadn't excused it. He had planned around it. He had hidden millions to keep it safe from his own child, and now that fortune was mine to guard. I wiped the tears from my cheeks and forced myself to keep digging. Harold's life had been built on routine, order, precision. If he'd hidden one thing, there would be more. I turned back to the transaction history, scrolling line after line of deposits. The entries after 2008 leapt out. Property sale. Real. Estate liquidation. Asset transfer. Properties. What properties? Harold had never so much as hinted at owning real estate beyond our family home. My pulse quickened as I cross-checked old mail files, insurance folders, even stray scraps of paper tucked into Harold's desk drawers. And then I found it. In the back of a drawer, behind stacks of utility bills and grocery lists, was a slim folder labeled Insurance. But inside were no policies. Instead, there were deeds, titles, contracts, dozens of them. Harold had quietly bought and sold buildings across Portland, apartment blocks, duplexes, even storefronts, transactions I had never once been part of. My breath came shallow as I flipped through the paperwork. Every sale in the past year had the same buyer listed at the bottom, Grant Holdings, LLC. The name burned in my vision. Grant. My family name. No, it wasn't coincidence. I could feel the truth pressing down on me. Adrian, my son, wasn't just circling Harold's hidden fortune. He was actively buying up the properties Harold had built. He had been waiting, watching, positioning himself to devour everything Harold left behind. I pressed a hand against my chest as nausea rolled through me. What kind of man steals from his own father's grave? The desk phone rang, sharp and sudden. My heart leapt. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Mrs. Grant?" a calm male voice asked. "This is Victor Hale. I worked with your husband." My grip on the receiver tightened. You knew Harold? A pause. Then more carefully. He hired me. I'm a private investigator. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Why would Harold hire a private investigator? Victor's tone was steady, professional, but beneath it, I sensed pity. He was concerned about your son, Adrian. He asked me to look into his financial dealings. My knees weakened, and I sank into Harold's chair. And what did you find? There was rustling on. The other end, then Victor's voice hardened. Mrs. Grant, Adrian has accumulated over $180,000 in gambling debts with offshore betting sites. He's also taken out multiple high-interest loans using falsified information. In plain words, he's buried in debt. My stomach dropped. Gambling, loans, lies. But Victor wasn't finished. More troubling, he's made repeated inquiries with lawyers about inheritance laws, wills, and power of attorney. My conclusion was that Adrian was preparing to have Harold declared incompetent, or worse, to gain control of assets after his passing. My mouth went dry. He was planning to do the same to me? Silence. Then Victor said quietly, Yes, ma'am. Harold feared that when the time came, Adrian would turn on you. That's why he asked me to document everything. My vision blurred as tears welled again. Harold hadn't just hidden money. He had been fighting a private war, a war to protect me from our own son. Mrs. Grant, Victor added, his tone firm now. Harold instructed me to contact you if he passed unexpectedly. If you'd like, I can bring the files to you. Yes, I whispered. My throat felt tight, my whole body trembling. Please, bring them. When the call ended, I sat in the heavy quiet of Harold's office, staring at the pile of deeds and contracts. The walls seemed to close in as the truth sharpened in my chest. Adrian hadn't pawned Harold's watch for pizza money or vacation spending. He'd stolen it because he was looking for exactly what I had just found. The code, the fortune, the proof. And now that I had it, I knew one thing with searing certainty. Adrian wouldn't stop until he tore it from my hands. The following afternoon, Victor Hale arrived at my doorstep. He was tall, neatly dressed in a charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase worn at the edges. His handshake was firm, his eyes steady, but there was kindness in them too, the kind Harold used to have when calming me after nightmares. We sat at Harold's desk, the folder between us. Victor opened it and spread the documents across the polished wood. Here's everything I uncovered, he said, pointing to each file in turn. Bank records of Adrian's losses, copies of his loan applications with falsified income statements, screenshots of his online gambling accounts, and here, he pulled out a typed report with his letterhead, a summary of his attempts to inquire about declaring you unfit. My stomach twisted as I read line after line. Adrian wasn't just reckless. He was calculated. He had been laying groundwork, step by step, to strip me of my independence. Victor's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Your husband was right to prepare. With this evidence, Adrian won't get far in any legal attempt. But you need to be careful. The moment he realizes you know, he'll become desperate. I pressed trembling fingers to my lips. Harold knew all this, and he never told me? He wanted to spare you the worry, Victor said gently. But he also knew you'd be strong enough to face it when the time came. My heart cracked. Harold hadn't lied out of selfishness. He had borne the weight alone to shield me. Those nights he seemed distracted, stressed, withdrawn. I had thought it was work, but it was this, always this. I closed the folder and looked Victor in the eyes. What do I do now? He leaned back, his expression firm. You hold your ground. Adrian may try to charm you, or pressure you, or scare you, but you have the truth, and Harold left you the tools to fight. For the first time since Harold died, I felt something stir in me. Not just grief, not just anger, resolve. I nodded slowly, clutching the folder to my chest. Then let him come. I'm ready. The knock on my front door came early that Saturday. Morning, sharp and deliberate, not the polite tapping of neighbors or the friendly rap of a delivery boy. I froze in the kitchen, teacup halfway to my lips. Through the curtain, I saw them, Adrian and Cassandra, standing side by side on my porch. My son's hands were buried in his coat pockets, his jaw tight, while Cassandra's painted smile stretched too wide, her eyes glinting like a predator, about to pounce. I set the cup down with a trembling hand, then straightened my back. So it begins, I thought. I opened the door, keeping my expression neutral. Mom, Adrian said quickly, his tone forced. We thought we'd check on you. Make sure you're doing okay. Cassandra added smoothly. We were worried. After everything with the watch, we just wanted to reconnect. Her voice dripped with false sweetness, like syrup hiding poison. I stepped aside. Come in then. The moment they entered, I felt my house grow smaller, tighter. Cassandra's perfume filled the air, expensive, cloying, masking the rot of her intentions. We sat in the living room. I took the armchair by the fireplace. They perched together on the sofa like a united front. Adrian cleared his throat. So, what have you been up to, Mom? I almost laughed. He hadn't asked me that in years. Sorting through your father's things, I said simply, watching their eyes. Cassandra tilted her head. That must be hard. All those old memories and keepsakes. Sometimes it's better to let go, don't you think? There it was, the first crack in the mask. Always nudging, always pushing me to rid myself of Harold's things. I've been thinking, Adrian said, leaning forward. If Dad left anything, like accounts or paperwork you don't understand, I could help. I work with numbers all the time at the firm. I bit back a bitter smile. Harold had been right. Adrian's greed was a bottomless pit. I leaned back, pretending casualness. Actually, there was one thing, a small account, hardly worth much. Both their heads snapped toward me. Cassandra's smile faltered. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Oh? Cassandra asked, too quickly. What kind of account? I watched them, savoring the way their hunger betrayed them. Just something your father tucked away years ago. I haven't had time to look into it. Adrian swallowed hard, his knuckles whitening. Where is it? Do you have the details? I let the silence hang before answering, my voice cool. Why so interested? His mask slipped for just a moment, panic, then greed, then the practiced calm of a liar. I just don't want you. Confused, Mom. You've always been forgetful with numbers. My heart burned. Forgetful. That word again. Their weapon of choice. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. I know about Grant Holdings, Adrian. Every property your father sold ended up in your hands. I know about the gambling debts, the loans, the lies. And I know you've been plotting to have me declared incompetent. The color drained from his face. Cassandra, however, didn't flinch. She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. Oh, Evelyn, she sneered, dropping the sugary tone. You really have lost it, haven't you? Listening to whispers, making up stories, no wonder Harold never trusted you with finances. My hands clenched on the armrest, but I held her gaze. Harold trusted me more than he ever trusted either of you. He knew everything. He documented everything. Adrian shifted uncomfortably, his bravado crumbling. Mom, please, but... Cassandra cut in, her voice sharper, crueler. Don't you see? You're just an old woman, clinging to a dead man's secrets. Adrian and I, we're the future. You can't hold on to this forever. I rose from my chair, my voice shaking but fierce. You're right, Cassandra. I am an old woman, but I am not weak. And Harold left me everything. Proof of your lies, your debts, your schemes. You will never get your hands on what's his. Not a penny, not a scrap. Adrian stood too, his face pale, his hands trembling. For a moment I saw the boy he used to be, the boy Harold taught to fish, the boy who cried when he scraped his knee. But the man standing before me was hollowed out by greed. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. I need help. I made mistakes, but you don't understand what I'm facing. If you would just—" "Don't," I snapped, my voice slicing the air. "Don't you dare ask me to fix the mess you created. You pawned your father's memory. You lied to me. You planned to destroy me. That is who you are now." Cassandra tugged his arm, her own mask slipping completely into fury. "Enough of this. She's made her choice." Adrian's eyes brimmed, with something I couldn't read, shame, anger, or both. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Finally, he muttered, "You'll regret this, Mom." Cassandra added with venom, "Oh, she'll regret it. We'll make sure of that." They stormed out, the front door slamming so hard the windows rattled. I stood in the silence of my living room, my chest heaving, my heart pounding. The storm had come, just as Harold had warned, but for the first time, I felt steady, ready. They could vow revenge all they wanted. I had Harold's truth, and I would not let it go. The doorbell rang on a gray Tuesday morning, sharp and insistent. I opened it to find two men in tailored suits standing on my porch, their leather briefcases polished, their expressions stiff with manufactured authority. "Mrs. Grant?" the taller one asked, adjusting his tie. "We represent your son, Adrian Grant. We need to discuss some legal matters." My stomach turned. Lawyers. I stepped aside reluctantly, letting them into the living room. The shorter man set his briefcase on the coffee table, snapping it open with a sound that felt like a gun cocking. "Mrs. Grant," he began smoothly, "your son has expressed concern for your well-being. He worries that you may no longer be capable of managing your finances responsibly." The words sliced through me. Exactly what Harold and Victor had warned me about. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." The taller man gave a patronizing smile, the kind you might offer a child insisting the sky is green. "Of course, but it would be in everyone's best interest if you signed a power of attorney, granting Adrian the ability to make decisions on your behalf. This will prevent unfortunate mistakes." I gripped the arm of my chair, anger swelling. "Unfortunate mistakes? Or inconvenient truths for my son?" The shorter lawyer cleared his throat. "If you refuse, we will have no choice but to file a petition declaring you legally incompetent. A court-appointed doctor would evaluate your mental state. It could be unpleasant, Mrs. Grant, for everyone." For a moment, fear clawed at me. They weren't bluffing. Adrian was trying to strip me of everything, my autonomy, my dignity, my life. But then Harold's voice echoed in my mind. "Protect yourself, protect what's ours, and never, never trust him." I sat straighter, my chin lifting. "Gentlemen, you may tell my son this. I will sign nothing, and if he wishes to test me in court, I welcome it." The taller man frowned. "Mrs. Grant, be reasonable." I cut him off. "No, you be reasonable. You walked into my home with threats and half-truths, assuming I was weak, but you know nothing about me or about Harold Grant. Now kindly leave before I call the police." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then, with visible irritation, they snapped their briefcases shut and left without another word. When the door closed, I collapsed against it, my breath shaking. Fear and fury battled inside me. They were coming at me with everything, and Harold had been right. Adrian would stop at nothing. I picked up the phone and dialed Victor Hale. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Grant?" "They came," I whispered. "Lawyers. They tried to force me to sign power of attorney. They threatened to have me declared incompetent. Victor's voice hardened. Don't worry. Harold prepared for this exact scenario. I'll be at your house within the hour. True to his word, Victor arrived carrying a thick binder. He laid it on the dining table and opened it with deliberate care. This, he said, tapping the stack of papers, is Harold's insurance policy against Adrian. A complete legal defense. He gathered evidence for years, recordings, financial records, even Cassandra's whisper campaign in the community. My hands trembled as I flipped through the binder. There were transcripts of phone calls, photos of Adrian meeting with loan sharks, and, most shocking of all, audio recordings of Cassandra gossiping at neighborhood gatherings. On one page, a transcript read, Evelyn's mind is slipping, poor thing. She forgets things constantly. I worry she's not safe living alone. I covered my mouth with my hand. Cassandra hadn't just spread rumors. She had orchestrated an entire narrative. To paint me as senile. Victor leaned closer. Harold anticipated everything. He knew Adrian and Cassandra would try to isolate you, discredit you, strip you of control. That's why he hired me. He wanted you to have ironclad protection. Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't from sorrow. They were from awe. Harold hadn't abandoned me in death. He had built a fortress around me, stone by stone, secret by secret. Victor reached into the binder and pulled out a sealed envelope. My breath caught as I recognized Harold's handwriting. For you, Victor said softly. Harold instructed me to deliver this once you knew the full extent of Adrian's actions. My fingers shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, handwritten in Harold's steady script. My dearest Evelyn, it began. If you are reading this, then what I feared has come to pass. Adrian has turned against you, and Cassandra has sharpened the knife. I am so sorry you must bear this burden, but I know you are strong enough. The words blurred through my tears, but I forced myself to keep reading. Do not blame yourself. Adrian's greed is not your failure, it is his. I saw it growing in him for years, and though I tried to guide him, I could not change his heart. That is why I built this defense. Every reckless step he took, every lie he told, I used to strengthen the wall around you. I pressed the letter to my chest, Harold's voice alive in my heart. Perhaps the cruelest irony, my love, is that Adrian's greed helped build the wealth he now tries to steal. His bad investments, his gambling losses, I leveraged them into opportunities. Every mistake he made taught me how to protect us better. In a way, Adrian helped build the very empire that will now crush him. I let out a broken laugh, half sob, half triumph. Harold had not only protected me, he had used Adrian's own sins to create the fortress we now stood inside. The final lines of the letter gripped me hardest. Evelyn, I cannot decide this for you. When the time comes, you must choose. You can forgive Adrian, or you can let the law take him down. Either path is yours. But remember, strength does not always mean vengeance. Sometimes strength is choosing peace. Whatever you decide, know this. I have loved you beyond measure, and I always will. I folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down my cheeks. Victor placed a hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Grant, Harold gave you power most widows never have. The question is, how will you use it? I looked at the binder, at the letter, at the fortress of evidence Harold had built brick by brick, and in that moment, I felt something ignite inside me. Not fear, not sorrow, resolve. Harold had handed me the sword. Now it was my turn to wield it. The morning sky over Portland was steel gray, heavy with the promise of rain. I stood at my kitchen window, a steaming mug of tea cradled in my hands, when the sound shattered the quiet. Sirens, engines, boots pounding against pavement. I stepped onto the porch and saw them, black SUVs and vans screeching to a halt in front of Adrian's pristine colonial home just down the street. Men and women in dark jackets leapt out, bold white letters flashing on their backs, FBI. My breath caught as agents swarmed the house, weapons drawn. Neighbors emerged from doorways, their faces pale, their eyes wide. The front door of Adrian's home burst open, and Cassandra's shrill voice pierced the air. "You can't come in here! This is a mistake! We're respected people!" But the agents ignored her, sweeping through every room with mechanical precision. Adrian stumbled onto the porch, his face ashen, his hands shaking as they cuffed him. I should have felt horror, but instead, an eerie calm settled over me. This was the storm Harold had prepared for. And now, it was here. I turned back inside, the phone already buzzing in my hand. Adrian's number. I answered. "Mom." His voice was ragged, frantic. "You have to help me. Please. They're saying I laundered money, that I falsified documents. This is insane." My grip tightened on the phone. "Adrian," I said quietly, "you did this to yourself. Every lie, every scheme, it's all come home." "No," he cried, his voice cracking. "You don't understand. I needed a chance. Dad left me nothing. You left me nothing. What was I supposed to do?" My heart ached at his words, but I forced steel into my voice. "Your father left you everything that mattered. Love, guidance, opportunity. You threw it away. You pawned his memory, betrayed your family, and now you want me to rescue you?" There was silence on the line, broken only by his ragged breathing. Then, softly, he whispered, "I just thought, if you died, it would all come to me." The words hit like ice water. Adrian didn't just want my money. He had been waiting for my death. I closed my eyes, Harold's letter echoing in my mind. "You must choose, forgive or destroy him." When I spoke again, my voice was cold. "Goodbye, Adrian." I hung up before he could answer. Minutes later, another call came. Cassandra. The moment I answered, her voice exploded through the speaker. "You witch! This is all your fault. You poisoned Harold against us. You fed lies to the FBI. You've ruined everything." I let her rage wash over me. Then, in the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "No, Cassandra. Harold ruined you. He wired the house. Years ago, every whisper, every lie, every cruel word you spoke, it's all on record." There was a stunned pause on the other end, then a shriek. "You'll pay for this. Do you hear me? You'll pay." I ended the call, setting the phone down as if it were no more dangerous than a paperweight. For the first time in years, I felt no fear. By afternoon, word of the raid had spread across the neighborhood. I couldn't step outside without hearing the murmurs. "Did you see the agents? They took boxes of files." I always thought Cassandra was a little too perfect. Poor Evelyn. She was telling the truth all along. The phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Adrian or Cassandra. It was Mrs. Whitfield, my elderly neighbor. Her voice trembled with shame. "Evelyn, I owe you an apology. Cassandra told us so many things about you, about your memory, your health. I believed her. I'm so sorry." I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "Thank you, Margaret. That means more than you know." Not long after, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years began to call. Each one echoed the same sentiment: regret for believing lies, admiration for my strength, and apologies for ever doubting me. As the evening sun dipped low, I sat on my porch, the neighborhood quiet once more. Across the street, Adrian's house was dark, its windows boarded with yellow FBI tape. For years, Cassandra had painted me as fragile, senile, pitiful, and many had believed her. But now, the truth stood in the open. I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I was Evelyn Grant, and I had survived. It was late afternoon when the knock came. Not sharp and aggressive like Adrian's lawyers, not frantic like Cassandra's visits. This knock was steady, deliberate, and oddly respectful. I opened the door to find an older man standing tall on my porch. His hair was silver, his shoulders broad despite the weight of years, and his eyes carried the kind of calm you only see in men who have faced danger head-on. He wore a plain jacket, but the way he carried himself made him look like he was still in uniform. "Mrs. Grant?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Yes?" He removed his cap and held it respectfully at his side. "My name is Samuel Rhodes. I served as a federal marshal for nearly 30 years. Your husband hired me a long time ago." My heart skipped. "You knew Harold?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Knew him well enough. He came to me in the late 80s, said he had something precious, something that needed protection, not just from thieves, but from his own family." I stepped aside without hesitation. "Please, come in." He followed me into the living room and sat down slowly, as if each movement carried the weight of memory. From his coat, he pulled a small velvet pouch. He placed it gently on the coffee table between us. I knew before he opened it what was inside. The Rolex Harold's watch, the one Adrian had pawned, the one that had sparked this entire storm. Tears welled in my eyes as I reached for it, my hands trembling. I ran my fingers across the cool metal, tracing every familiar line. It was as though Harold himself had walked back into the room. "I don't understand," I whispered. "How did you get this?" Samuel leaned back, folding his weathered hands. "Harold left it with me years ago. He said, if anything happens to me, and if Evelyn ever needs it, make sure it finds its way back to her. He told me it wasn't just a keepsake, it was a safeguard." I blinked, clutching the watch to my chest. "A safeguard?" Samuel nodded. "Open the back again." I hesitated. The pawnshop had already revealed one hidden compartment, but I did as he said, sliding a thin knife along the back panel. The metal gave way with a soft click, revealing a second cavity I hadn't known existed. Inside was a tiny, neatly folded slip of paper and a micro SD card. My breath caught. Samuel's eyes softened. "Your husband was clever. He used me to keep the watch safe, and the watch itself to keep his secrets hidden. That card holds recordings, months' worth, meetings, calls, conversations Adrian never knew were being taped. Harold wired the house years before. He suspected Adrian would try to take everything, and he wanted a permanent record." I stared at the card, my heart hammering. "So this is the end. Proof no one can deny." He nodded. "More than proof. Harold instructed me to tell you there's a final document as well. Something that ensures Adrian won't just fail to inherit. He'll inherit only debts and the legal fallout of his own schemes. Harold called it his final protection plan." Samuel pulled a sealed envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. My fingers shook as I opened it, revealing another legal document, notarized and ironclad. The words made my chest tighten. All. Trust funds and estate assets to pass directly to Evelyn Grant. Beneficiary Adrian Grant shall inherit only liabilities tied to debts registered under his name or affiliated shell companies. In other words, Harold hadn't just blocked Adrian from inheriting, he had redirected the weight of Adrian's own fraud back onto him. My voice broke. "Harold, he built all this, step by step. He knew." Samuel's voice was gentle. "He loved you enough to fight battles long before they began. He didn't want you left defenseless, Evelyn. He wanted Adrian's greed to destroy only Adrian." I clutched the Rolex in one hand, the document in the other. The watch ticked softly, like Harold's heartbeat echoing across time. For years, I had thought of it as a symbol of memory. Now I saw it for what it truly was, Harold's weapon, his shield, his final embrace. Samuel stood, pulling his cap back. "On. My part in this is finished. Harold trusted me, and I've done what I promised. The rest is yours now." I rose with him, overcome with gratitude. "Mr. Rhodes, thank you. I don't know how to—" He raised a hand, stopping me. "No thanks needed. Just live." That's what Harold wanted most. Live free of fear. With that, he left, his footsteps steady on the porch, his figure fading. Into the dusk. I sank back into my chair, staring at the Rolex in my palm. My tears fell freely now, not of grief, but of awe. Harold had left behind not just wealth, not just security, but a masterpiece of protection. Adrian's fate was sealed. Cassandra's lies were silenced, and I, Evelyn Grant, held the proof in my hand. For the first time since Harold's death, I felt utterly safe. The storm had passed. Not quickly, not quietly, but decisively. In the months that followed the FBI raid, court proceedings sealed Adrian's fate. His debts, his false shell companies, his fraudulent accounts, all collapsed like dominoes. The legal system swallowed him whole, just as Harold had designed. Cassandra, stripped of her illusions, filed for divorce and vanished from Portland's gossip circles. For me, though, it was not a time for revenge. It was a time for healing. One crisp autumn morning, I stood at the grand entrance of New England Children's Hospital in Boston, a folder of signed donation papers tucked under my arm. The marble floors gleamed as families bustled past, little ones clutching teddy bears and balloons. Their laughter echoed through the halls, bright and pure. When the board of directors gathered to shake my hand, I spoke simply. This gift is not about money. It is about legacy. My husband, Harold Grant, believed in protection, of family, of dignity, of love. And now his name will protect children for generations to come. They led me outside to where construction was underway. A new wing would rise here, the Harold Grant Pediatric Wing. I watched as a banner unfurled, the name catching the sunlight. For the first time, I smiled without grief shadowing the corners of my heart. The irony wasn't lost on me. Adrian had clawed, lied, and schemed for money. And in the end, it was his greed that funded this act of goodness. What he meant for selfishness had become charity. Harold would have laughed at the poetic justice of it all. It was winter when I heard the timid knock at my door. I opened it to find Lila, my granddaughter, standing there with a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck and guilt written all over her face. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice quivering. "Can I come in?" I ushered her inside, my heart squeezing. She looked so much like Adrian when he was young, before bitterness twisted him. We sat at the kitchen table. Lila fidgeted with her gloves, eyes wet with unshed tears. "I need to say something," she began. "All this time, I believed Dad. I believed Cassandra. They said you were slipping, that you didn't know what you were doing anymore. I repeated their words. I doubted you. And now, after everything—" Her voice broke. "I feel like I betrayed you." I reached across the table, taking her trembling hands into mine. "Lila, you are not your father. You were a child caught between lies. None of this is your fault." She sobbed quietly, pressing her forehead into my palms. "I just don't want to lose you, too." Tears filled my eyes as I stroked her hair. "You never lost me, sweetheart, and I won't let this family break apart. You are my blood, my hope, my future. Whatever Adrian chose, that's on him, not on you." We stayed like that for a long while, just grandmother and granddaughter, healing an old wound. By the time she left, there was a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there before. A spark of forgiveness, and of connection reborn. By spring, I moved into a small, cozy house near Sebago Lake, Maine. From my porch, I could see the water shimmering like glass, framed by pine trees that whispered secrets in the wind. The days became simple, but deeply fulfilling. I joined a local book club where women my age laughed, argued over novels, and shared tea late into the evening. I volunteered at the library, reading aloud to children whose bright faces lit up at every fairy tale. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living under someone else's shadow. Not Harold's legacy, not Adrian's greed, not Cassandra's whispers, just me, Evelyn Grant, independent, whole, and yet Harold was still with me in every heartbeat, in every breath of peace. Each morning, I slipped the Rolex onto my wrist, not as a symbol of wealth or status, but as a promise fulfilled. His protection, his love, still ticked faithfully beside my skin. One golden evening, as the sun melted across the lake in shades, of amber and rose, I sat on my porch swing with a journal in my lap. The Rolex gleamed in the fading light. I thought of Harold, his steady hands, his laugh, the way he had looked at me as though I were the only woman in the world. He hadn't left me with empty words of romance. He had left me with something far greater: protection. That was his love language. Not flowers, not poems, but foresight, sacrifice, safety. As I watched the lake ripple under the wind, I realized the greatest love isn't always passion or excitement. It's protection. It's someone who thinks ahead for you, even when they won't be here to see the battles fought. It's someone who arms you with strength when they're gone. I closed my journal and looked into the camera I had set on a tripod, recording my story for the channel that had become my way of sharing and connecting. My voice trembled, but it was strong. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. I gave a soft smile, touched the Rolex on my wrist, and ended the recording. Behind me, the lake stretched wide and eternal, holding the reflection of the sunset, and of a woman who had been broken, betrayed, but had risen. Stronger, I was Evelyn Grant. I had been loved, protected, and now I was free.